Welcome to Miss Taylor's class notes, and today we're going to talk about the slope formula, or how to find slope from a graph. So, real quick, let's review to make sure that we remember what some of these key words are. So, rate of change, we said the same thing as slope. Slope is represented by the letter M, and slope on a graph is rise over run, which is the same thing as the change in y over the change in x. And again, the way that we find it from a graph, I just said it, is we go rise over run. So if we're given something that does not have a graph, we can still find the slope if we use what we call our slope formula. So again, we know that slope is represented by the letter M. So our slope formula starts with the letter M equals, because our slope equals. And because it's the change in y over the change in x, our y value is going to go on the top. So we're going to go y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1. So when we're given a table or a chart, we always want to label. So the first x value I'm given is x1. The second x value I'm given is x2, x3, x4, x5, so on and so forth. We really only need the first two, but you can label them all if you need to. So y1, y2, and now all we need to do is plug them in our formula. So again, it's y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So my y2 is 11, and I'm going to put negative or minus because that's what my formula tells me, and then I'm going to write down my 3. And I'm going to write down my x2, which is 2, minus 0, which is what my formula tells me. So I'm going to real quick pull out my calculator and show you how our calculator can help us out with this. So if you're using your yellow calculator in class, we're going to hit our alpha y equals button and then enter to get our fraction. We're going to write 11 minus 3 on top. We're going to down arrow to the bottom, 2 minus 0. And it tells us that our M, or our slope, is 4. So I want you to do the same thing with this one here, and I want you to go ahead and check it with the class notes. All right, this table looks a little bit different, which is why I want to make sure that we do this one together. So we have our x there, so our first value, let me write that where it's a little bit easier, is going to be x1. Our second value is going to be x2. Our y is this column here, so that's y1, y2. So we take our slope formula, not x, y2 minus y1 for x2 minus x1. And so now we need to plug in our values. So our y2 is 3 minus our y1, which is 2. y2 is 5 minus x1, which is 7. So we're going to hit alpha y equals and then enter on our calculator. 3 minus 2. And then I'm going to arrow down 5 minus 7. We're going to hit enter. And so your calculator, if it's the yellow calculator, should give you a fraction. But if for some reason it does not give you a fraction, we're going to hit our math button, which is below alpha. We're going to hit enter, which tells it we want a fraction, and then we're going to hit enter again. So our slope for this is negative 1/2. I'm going to real quickly tell you that this column is x and this column is y, and I want you to go ahead and do that one on your own as well. All right, so occasionally we see them give us points instead of something on the table. So we've got to remember that our x always comes first, followed by our y when they give us a point. So the first point is going to be x1, y1. Our second point is going to be x2, y2. So we've got our formula, which is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So our y2 that we have labeled is 3. Sorry, my vacuum's going today. Minus, and our y1 is 1. Then we have our x2, which is 4, minus our x1, which is 1. And so I'm going to show you our other calculator that we sometimes use in class, which is Desmos. So Desmos works very similar to the yellow calculator. It's just on our computer instead of being in our hands. So whenever we use Desmos, we have to hit divide first so that we can get our fraction. That way we can type our fraction in. So I'm going to go 3 minus 1, and then I'm going to click down and go 4 minus 1. Now Desmos will usually give us a decimal to start, but if we click this little circle with the 2 boxes next to our fraction, it's going to turn it into a fraction. So we get 2/3. And so now let's talk about this next one real quick because it's a little bit trickier. It's got something that we've got to be paying attention to so that we make sure we get it right. So x always comes first when we're given points, and then y. And the first point is always x1, y1. Second point is x2, y2. So our formula is not x. Oh, it's one of those mornings. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So our y2 is -2 minus y1, which is 4. Our x2 is 10 minus, but in this case, our x1 is negative. So we need to make sure that we have the negative that the formula tells us as well as the negative of the number. So we're going to hit our division sign, and our division is the same thing as a fraction. We're going to type in -2 minus 4 on the top, and we're simply going to type in -10 minus -2. If you want to put the -2 in parentheses, it's going to do the same thing and it's going to work just fine, but just letting you know you can either do it with or without parentheses, but we got to make sure we have both negatives. So we're going to turn it into a fraction by hitting that fraction button next to it. So our slope is a -1/2. Let's do this last one together because it has one more tricky part in it that I want us to make sure that we see and that we understand. x1, y1, x2, y2, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So our y2 is 5 minus 8. Our x2 is -7 minus a -7. And so let's go ahead and type this one in. Division sign first. 5 minus 8 over -7 minus -7. And so if we'll notice here on Desmos, if it's undefined, Desmos is actually going to tell me that my slope is undefined. It's going to use the words, and there's going to be no confusion. The yellow calculator, unfortunately, will just give you an error message. So this is one reason why I like Desmos, is because we have an undefined slope, it'll help us out that way. All right, now I want you to do this one real quick as well, and again, check it with the class notes to make sure you did it right.